Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Tales of the Darkness. Tonight you'll hear 5 stories about people who thought they were alone until something decided to prove them wrong. Strange routines, quiet houses, closed doors, and corridors that should lead nowhere. Each one of them became an invitation. Not every knock comes from a neighbor. Not every whisper belongs to someone alive. And not every door was meant to open from this side. Turn off the lights. Listen closely. And if something starts copying the sounds you make, do not answer. Let us begin. Story 1. The apartment on the end of the hallway. My name is Lucas, and for most of my life, I never believed that a place could decide it didn't want you there. When this happened, I was living in a small apartment at the very end of a long, narrow hallway. It wasn't a dangerous building, just old and tired. The walls were thin, the pipes complained at random hours, and the hallway lights buzzed like insects trapped under glass. The rent was cheap. I worked late, came home exhausted, and didn't ask for more. The apartment next to mine, though, was different. The door was always closed. No decorations, no welcome mat, no signs of life. I never heard a television or music from inside. Sometimes I thought I heard faint movement when I passed by, but it was so soft I could have imagined it. One day, a neighbor mentioned casually that the unit had been empty for a long time. Empty. That word stayed with me. If no one was living there, what had I been hearing? The first real incident happened on a Sunday night. I was in my living room, sitting on the floor with my back against the wall I shared with that apartment. I had my headphones on, but my music was low. I liked the feeling of the wall against my shoulders. It made the space feel smaller, safer. I felt it before I heard it. A thump against the wall. Gentle, but definite. I paused the music. The room went quiet, except for the low hum of the fridge and distant traffic outside. Then it came again. Not like something falling. Too controlled. One solid knock, exactly where my shoulder touched the wall. I shifted a few inches away. Another knock. Slightly lower, tracing the movement. I sat perfectly still, heart pounding. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, slowly, 3 soft taps moved upward, like fingers walking along the other side. I stood and stepped back. The wall went quiet. I told myself it had to be the building settling. A pipe, maybe the neighbor upstairs. The mind plays tricks when you're tired. I pushed the thought away and went to bed. A few nights later, I woke up to footsteps in the hallway outside my door. Slow, uneven. I didn't think much of it. At first, people came and went at all hours. But the steps stopped directly in front of my door. No key, no knock, just breathing. I held my breath and listened. It didn't sound like someone standing on the other side. It sounded closer, like it was inside the door itself, exhaling through the cracks. Then, from the wall to my left, the one touching the empty apartment, I heard scratching. Soft, circular, like something testing the surface. I stayed in bed, staring at the ceiling, telling myself I'd check in the morning. I didn't. The building manager confirmed the apartment next door was still vacant. He even joked about it. "If you hear anything," he said, "it's just old bones and older pipes." That didn't help. The scratching continued for days. Not constant, not rhythmic. It always appeared when things were quiet. Sometimes it followed my movements. When I walked from the living room to the kitchen, it traced along the wall at the same pace. One evening, I finally snapped. I stood facing the wall and said out loud, "I know no one's supposed to be in there." The scratching stopped instantly. Silence fell so fast it felt heavy. I waited, heart pounding, staring at the plaster as if it might peel back and show me what was listening. Nothing answered. That night, I woke to a new sound. Knocking, not from the wall. From inside the wardrobe, at the foot of my bed, 3 sharp knocks, like knuckles striking the wooden back panel. I froze. The wardrobe rested against the same wall that separated my bedroom from the empty apartment. I told myself it was the structure shifting, even though nothing was stacked behind it. Eventually, the knocking stopped. In the morning, I opened the wardrobe. Nothing had moved. The back panel was intact, but when I touched it, the wood felt cold, far colder than the rest of the room. Weeks passed like that. Scratches, taps, muffled knocks from inside objects pressed against that wall. Then one evening, I came home and saw something that made my stomach drop. The door to the empty apartment was open. Only a few inches, just enough for darkness to spill into the hallway. I stood there, keys in hand, listening. No voices, no television, no movement. I leaned closer and peered inside. At first, I saw nothing. On my last night, sleeping on the living room floor, I woke to footsteps circling me inside the room. They stopped near my feet. Something knelt, something breathed. Then it went back into the wall. I left the next morning and never returned. My new place felt brighter, quieter. I convinced myself it was over. I almost believed it, until one night, as I walked past the wall beside my couch, 3 soft taps followed my steps. Whatever it was had learned, and it had found a way to bring its wall with it. Next, we're going to hear the story of the thing behind the curtain. Story 2: The Thing Behind the Curtain. My name is Aaron. Before this happened, I believed fear came from things you could see. A shape in the dark, a figure standing where no one should be, footsteps that didn't belong. I was wrong. Real fear comes from something that stays still long enough for you to believe it isn't there. I had just moved into a small studio apartment. It wasn't much, but it was quiet, and that mattered to me. The building was old and narrow, built in a way that made every sound feel closer than it should have been. My apartment had one long window facing the street, covered by a heavy beige curtain that reached all the way to the floor. The previous tenant had left it behind. I didn't like it, but it blocked the streetlight well enough, and I didn't feel like replacing it right away. The first strange thing happened on my second night. I turned off the lamp beside my bed. As the room fell into darkness, something felt off. I couldn't explain it at first. Then my eyes adjusted, and I noticed the curtain. It wasn't hanging evenly. One section bulged inward slightly, like the fabric was draped over something solid, not sharply, not aggressively, just enough to suggest weight behind it. I turned the lamp back on immediately. The curtain hung flat, perfectly normal. I stood there for a moment, staring at it, feeling foolish. New place, unfamiliar shadows, the mind filling in gaps. I told myself that was all it was. The next night, it happened again. Lights off, darkness. The bulge returned. This time it was lower, closer to the height of a crouched person. The shape wasn't defined, but it was unmistakably wrong. I watched it for a long time, my heart pounding as I waited for it to move. It didn't. Eventually, I forced myself to walk over and yank the curtain aside in one quick motion. There was nothing there. Just the window. Just the dark outside. I went to bed uneasy, but unconvinced. I woke up sometime during the night with the certainty that I wasn't alone. I didn't need to look around the room to know where my eyes would land. The curtain was bulging again. Not subtly this time. It pressed inward firmly, as if something tall was standing behind it, leaning forward. The shape reached higher than it should have, too high to be someone standing upright, unless they were bending toward me. I stayed completely still. The curtain shifted. Not from wind, not from outside. From inside the room, the pressure increased, the fabric stretching outward, forming a rounded shape near the top like the outline of a head pressed close. It looked as though something was standing inches from me, separated only by fabric. Then I heard it inhale, a slow, deliberate breath. It didn't sound human. It had depth to it, like air being drawn through something hollow, something not meant to breathe. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, pointing it straight at the curtain. The fabric fell flat instantly, as if nothing had ever touched it. I didn't sleep after that. The next day, I checked everything: the window frame, the glass, the locks, all intact. There was no way anyone could have entered. No sign that anything had been there at all. Night came again. I waited longer than usual before turning off the lights. When I finally did, the curtain bulged immediately. No delay, no forming shape. It was already there, lower than before, closer to the floor. The air felt heavier, like the room itself was shrinking. The bulge shifted slightly from side to side, as if whatever was behind the curtain was adjusting its weight. Considering, I whispered one word: stop. The shape froze. Then the bottom edge of the curtain lifted, just a few inches, as if something beneath it was curling the fabric upward with fingers, or something trying to be fingers. I couldn't see what was doing it, but I knew it wasn't human. Something scraped softly across the floor beneath the curtain. Slow, deliberate. That was enough. I grabbed my keys and ran out of the apartment barefoot, leaving the lights off and the curtain exactly as it was. I didn't return until morning. In daylight, the apartment looked harmless. The curtain hung flat, ordinary, lifeless. But when I pulled it aside, I found a dark smear on the floor near the wall. It looked vaguely like the side of a hand, only it had too many joints and no defined fingers. I moved out 2 days later. On my last visit, I stood by the door and looked back at the curtain one final time. It didn't move, it didn't bulge, it didn't react. But as I closed the door, I could have sworn it lifted slightly, just enough to suggest that something behind it was standing up, watching. Whatever had been there was patient, and it had all the time it needed to learn how to come through. Next, we're going to hear the story of the guest room that wouldn't stay closed. Story 3, the guest room that wouldn't stay closed. My name is Elise, and what happened to me began with something that should have been harmless: a guest room. It was a small, unused space at the end of my hallway that I almost never opened. It had a single window, a bare bed frame left behind by the previous tenant, and a narrow closet with a stubborn door that never quite closed all the way. The room always felt colder than the rest of the apartment, but I blamed poor insulation. I didn't spend time in there. Most days, I kept the door shut. There was nothing strange about it. Not at first. The first time, I noticed something was wrong. I woke up in the middle of the night to a soft click somewhere down the hallway. I lay still, listening. After a few seconds, another sound followed a slow creak, long and uneven. It took me a moment to recognize it. The closet door in the guest room. The one that never closed properly. The one I hadn't touched in weeks. I got out of bed, turned on the hallway light, and walked toward the room. The door was open just a crack. I pushed it with my fingertips, and it floated inward silently, revealing the small, cold space beyond. Everything looked normal. The window, the empty floor, the bare bed frame, the closet door resting slightly ajar. I closed it fully and walked away, telling myself that air pressure could make old doors shift. I returned to bed and forced myself to sleep. An hour later, the click woke me again. Same sound, same slow creak, same cold prickling sensation crawling up my spine. The closet had opened on its own. I left the hallway light on and slept badly, telling myself I would deal with it in the morning. But nothing could have prepared me for what I found the next day. When I opened the guest room door in daylight, the closet wasn't just open, it was wide open. Both doors were spread apart unnaturally, exposing the empty interior. And on the floor inside, near the back corner, something had changed. A small indentation in the dust. Like a knee. Next to it, another. And beside those, a long mark dragged forward, as though something had crawled out of the closet and into the room. My breath caught in my throat. I stepped back, shut the room door, and told myself I would not open it again. But the room didn't agree. That night, the temperature in the apartment dropped sharply. I could feel the cold leaking under the guest room door, sliding across the floor like fog. I turned on the heat. It didn't help. Around 2 in the morning, I heard it. Breathing. Not mine. Not from my bedroom. From the guest room down the hall. Slow. Steady. Almost. Patient. I pulled the covers up to my chin and stared at my doorway. The hallway was dark except for a faint glow from the kitchen nightlight. The air felt heavy with cold. Then came the sound that made my stomach twist. The guest room door hinge. Moving. I didn't want to look, but my body turned on its own. The door was opening. Very slowly. As if someone were standing behind it, pushing it outward with careful intention. I whispered, "No," even though I knew it wouldn't stop anything. The breathing grew louder, closer. Inside the hallway now. Then I heard footsteps. Not heavy, not rushed. Just the slow shifting of weight on old floorboards, inching toward my room. I shut my eyes tight. I didn't want to see what was coming. But I felt it. A cold presence stopped at my bedroom doorway. My blankets tensed, as though someone had grabbed the bottom edge with both hands. For a moment, nothing moved. Then the blanket slid downward. Just an inch. Then another. I was frozen. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. The blanket slipped again, exposing my legs to the freezing air. Something touched my ankle light, cautious, like a fingertip learning the shape of me. The breathing was so close, it vibrated inside my ears. And then, a sudden knock at my front door. 3 loud, sharp hits. Human, unexpected, real. The cold vanished instantly. The blankets dropped. The pressure in the air lifted. The footsteps retreated fast, too fast back down the hall. I heard the guest room door slam shut, as if whatever had been there dove inside to hide. I ran to the front door, desperate for anyone with a heartbeat. It was my neighbor, apologizing for waking me. He had accidentally hit the wrong door while coming home late. I didn't care. I almost hugged him out of relief. But when he left, I didn't go back to my bedroom. I sat in the living room until morning. The next day, I opened the guest room door again. Everything was undisturbed, except for one thing. The closet door. Closed. Completely closed. Something that had never fully shut before now sealed tight, as if holding something inside. I didn't stay after that. I packed quickly and left the apartment for good. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm half asleep, I swear I still hear that soft click. The sound of a door that was waiting for me once. And maybe still is. Next, we're going to hear the story of the door that answered back. Story 4, The Door That Answered Back. My name is Jonah, and this is the story of a door that stopped being just a piece of wood and became something that listened. I live alone, and for a long time I thought that was what scared me the most, being the only person between four walls, with no one to notice if something went wrong. I was wrong. What's worse is realizing you're not alone, and that whatever is with you doesn't need an invitation. It began with knocking. Ordinary. At first. One evening, just after I'd finished dinner, someone knocked on my front door. 3 quick knocks. I checked the time too late for deliveries, too early for the kind of neighbors who show up drunk. I wasn't expecting anyone. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. No one was there. I waited, expecting someone to step back into view, maybe having leaned too close. The hallway was empty. The light outside my door flickered slightly, but that was normal for the building. I stayed there for almost a minute. I pressed to the glass. Nothing. I told myself I'd imagined it, that the knock had come from another floor or another door, and the sound had just bounced strangely. I went back to the living room. 5 minutes later, it happened again. 3 knocks. Same rhythm, same firmness. This time, I went to the door immediately. I looked through the peephole. Nothing. I opened the door a crack and glanced up and down the hallway. Empty. No footsteps retreating. No doors closing. No voices. Just the dim light and the dull smell of dust and cleaning chemicals. The 3rd time, I didn't get up. I sat on the couch, staring at the door while the knocks came. Slow. Patient. Like whoever was doing it knew I was there and was willing to wait. Eventually, it stopped. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with the door. Not the lock, not the hinges. The door itself. The idea of it. The fact that there was such a thin barrier between me and whatever could stand in the hallway. Around 2 in the morning, I woke up with a dry throat. I walked to the kitchen for water. On the way back, I passed the front door. From the other side, without warning, came 3 soft knocks. So soft I felt them more than heard them, like someone had placed their hand gently against the wood right where my chest would be on the other side. I froze. Whoever it was had been waiting in silence. I didn't look through the peephole this time. I just stood there, holding my breath. After a few seconds I whispered, "Who is it?" I regretted it the moment the words left my mouth. There was a pause. Then, from the other side of the door, my own voice answered, "Let me in." Exactly my tone. exactly my cadence. As if someone had recorded me and pressed play. The sound didn't come from down the hall. It came from the door itself. From the thickness of the wood, my heart hammered painfully in my chest. I backed away slowly, keeping my eyes on the door until I reached my bedroom. I locked that door too, even though I knew it wouldn't matter. The next morning, everything was ordinary again. The hallway outside was empty. No marks on the door, no sign anyone had been there. I told myself it had been a dream. That lie didn't last long. Over the next week, the knocking followed a pattern. Always 3 knocks, always when I passed nearby. It stopped if I ignored it. It grew worse if I acknowledged it. Once, when I was feeling brave or stupid, I pressed my palm flat against the door after the knocks came. The wood was cold, not cool, not room temperature. Cold, like something on the other side was pulling the warmth out of me. "You have the wrong place," I said, trying to sound annoyed instead of scared. Silence. Then, right under my hand, came a soft thud, as if a matching palm had pressed back. For a moment, I felt a faint tapping under my skin, a rhythm that wasn't my heartbeat, like it was trying to sync with me. I yanked my hand away and didn't touch the door again for hours. The worst night was the one when the knocking didn't stop at 3. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, when I heard it. 3 loud knocks. Then, without pause, 3 more, and 3 more. Over and over. Relentless. Mechanical. Like it had decided the old rules didn't matter anymore. I got up and walked toward the door slowly. The knocking never broke rhythm. When I reached the door, it went quiet. Completely. The timing hurt my head. It was too perfect. I didn't look through the peephole. Instead, I turned off the hallway light and stood there in the dark, listening. From the other side came a whisper. Not words at first, just the shape of sound, like something practicing how to speak with a throat that wasn't used to it. Then it tried again. "Let me in. Let." This time it wasn't only my voice. It was mine layered with others, like several versions of me speaking at once, stitched together into something wrong, stretched, echoed. I stepped away, every nerve screaming at me not to respond. The door shuddered, not from impact, from inside, like something had leaned against it and pushed. The lock rattled softly, though nothing turned it. The chain lifted and slipped, as if tested. That was enough. I slept in the bedroom with a chair wedged under the handle that night, even though the bedroom door didn't look any stronger than the front one. The chair felt more like a ritual than a barrier. The next day, I asked the building manager if anyone had reported someone strange knocking on doors at night. He shook his head and said no, but looked at me a little too long, as if trying to decide if I was serious. "Before I left," he added, "the door won't open unless you open it. Just remember that." I wanted to believe him. I really did. The last incident happened the night I decided to move out. Most of my things were already packed. Boxes lined the walls. The apartment felt empty, exposed. There was less between me and the door than ever. I sat on the floor, back against the far wall, watching the door like it might move on its own. Hours passed. Nothing happened. Near midnight, the building went quiet. No pipes, no footsteps above, no distant doors closing. That was when the handle began to turn, very slowly, metal scraping against metal. A sound I knew well, my own key from the outside, but this time it came from inside the mechanism, without any key at all. The handle lowered halfway, then rose again, as if something on the other side were testing how far it could go. I whispered, "You can't come in." The handle stopped. Then the door itself spoke. Already did. The voice wasn't mine this time. It sounded like a perfect imitation of the building manager. Calm, reassuring. Every hair on my arm stood up. I stared at the door, more afraid of its surface than of anything that could be standing behind it. The handle let go. The lock clicked softly, all on its own. The seam around the doorframe darkened, like a shadow had pressed itself into every gap. I grabbed my bag, keys in hand, and walked toward it. Every instinct told me not to touch it, but I had no choice. I had to leave. I turned the lock, opened the door, and stepped into the hallway. It was empty, silent, normal. Before closing the door behind me, I glanced at the inside surface one last time. There, at about chest height, were several faint oval smudges, like the marks left by someone pressing their forehead against the wood, over and over, except they were all slightly different sizes, different heights, different shapes, as if many faces had been leaning there quietly, waiting to be let in. Now, in my new place, I double-checked locks and chains 3 times before bed. I tell myself a door is just a door. But sometimes, late at night, when everything is too quiet, I think I hear it again. 3 soft knocks. Not from outside, from the door itself. Like something that learned how to imitate me, is still trying to finish the conversation. Finally, we're going to hear the last story. Footsteps on the ceiling. Story 5. Footsteps on the ceiling. My name is Mara, and I used to think the scariest thing about living on the top floor was the roof creaking when it rained. Now I know there are sounds you should never hear when there is nothing above you. When I moved into that apartment, one of the selling points was that it was the last floor. No neighbors upstairs, no loud music at midnight, no one pacing over my head. Just the roof and the sky. The first weeks were peaceful. I slept better than I had in years. No constant thumps, no strange noises from above, just the occasional groan of the building settling, or the whisper of wind pressing against the windows. Then, one night, I woke up to footsteps on the ceiling. At first, I thought I was dreaming. The sound was too clear, soft, measured steps walking from one corner of my bedroom to the other, directly over my head. I stared up at the dark ceiling, blinked a few times, and checked the time on my phone. Middle of the night. Too late for construction. Too early for maintenance. I reminded myself that old buildings sometimes echoed strangely. Maybe it was someone in the hallway or downstairs, and the sound was just bouncing in a way that made it seem closer. The next night, the footsteps came back. Same pattern, same slow pace, same path. I lay perfectly still, listening. The steps stopped when they reached the wall above my headboard, then turned and walked back. I got up, went to the living room, and checked the floor plan in the folder the landlord had given me. Above my unit, according to the layout, there was only the roof. No attic, no storage, just open air. I told myself the plan could be old or wrong. I made a note to ask the landlord. I did the next day. He laughed, shook his head, and confirmed it. No one above you, he said. Enjoy the silence. I didn't tell him the silence was already gone. Over the next few nights, The footsteps grew bolder. At first, they only appeared in my bedroom. Then I started hearing them in other rooms too. While I washed dishes in the kitchen, something paced directly overhead, matching my movement from sink to counter and back. When I sat on the couch in the living room, the steps moved above me in slow circles, as if whatever made them was learning the size of the space. One night, I finally had enough. As the footsteps crossed my bedroom ceiling, I whispered, "I know no one is up there." The sound stopped instantly. The silence that followed wasn't normal silence. It felt thick, pressed down, like the room was waiting. My skin prickled as I stared at the blank ceiling. I should not have said anything. The next time the footsteps came, they were different. They weren't just pacing anymore. They started sinking with me. If I walked from the bedroom to the bathroom, I would hear them fall in step above, just a fraction of a second behind, like a delayed reflection. And if I stopped, they took one extra step, then stopped too. I tried everything to drown it out. I turned on every light. I kept the TV running. I made phone calls to friends just to fill the air with voices. It didn't matter. Late at night, when everything else calmed down, the ceiling came alive. The worst part was that no one else heard it. I invited a friend over to stay the night, hoping that if he heard it too, I could finally prove I wasn't imagining things. That night, the ceiling was completely silent. He slept easily. I lay awake until dawn, listening for anything. Nothing. And the moment he left the next day, the footsteps returned steady and deliberate, as if they'd only been waiting for me to be alone again. It felt like whatever was up there didn't want witnesses. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me. One afternoon, when the landlord was out, I went up the emergency staircase to the roof. The door at the top was heavy and rusted, but it opened with enough force. The roof was empty. A gray surface stretching in every direction. No access panels. No attic doors. Nothing that suggested anyone or anything could exist between my ceiling and that concrete. I stood there, trying to match the position of my bedroom in my head. When I was roughly sure I had it, I walked back and forth across the area where my bed would be underneath. Nothing felt strange. No hollow echo. No weak points. I exhaled, half disappointed, half relieved, and started toward the door. Then I heard it. Footsteps. From below. Not from the staircase behind me. From under my feet. They moved directly beneath the roof surface, slow and deliberate, following me as I froze in place. I stepped back. The footsteps stepped back too, perfectly in sync. I didn't stay up there long after that. That night, something changed. I woke up to a soft thump above my head, like someone dropping a heavy bag onto the ceiling. Then came the footsteps, heavier than before, each step making a low, dull sound I could feel in my bones. They moved toward the center of the room and stopped. The ceiling creaked. At first I thought it was just settling. Then I saw it. A faint bulge overhead, barely visible in the low light leaking in from the street. The plaster pushed downward, just slightly, as if bearing weight. I stared, unable to look away. Something scraped across the inside of the ceiling, slow, dragging, trailing in a line. Dust loosened and fell in a thin ribbon onto the floor beside my bed. Then my name came, spoken in a voice that wasn't a voice at all, more like breath pressed through plaster. It didn't travel through the air. It vibrated through the ceiling. I didn't answer. I pulled the blanket over my head like a child and lay trembling until morning. The next day, a thin crack lined the spot where the ceiling had bulged. The crack ran in a short curve, almost like the outline of a heel. I moved my bed. I slid it to the opposite side of the room, away from the crack. That night, I lay down, exhausted but wired with dread, and waited. Hours passed. Nothing happened. No footsteps, no creaks, no movement. My eyelids grew heavy. I started to believe, for just a moment, that moving the bed had broken whatever pattern it was following. Then, directly above my new position, the ceiling groaned. Footsteps crossed the room again, slower than before, like something feeling around for me. They stopped above the bed. A pause, like a held breath. Then the plaster pushed downward again. A new bulge. A new place. Something up there had learned where I was now. That was the moment I knew I had to leave. I packed over the next week, ignoring the sounds as best as I could. Sometimes the footsteps followed me from room to room. Sometimes they stayed in one spot for hours, like whatever made them was waiting, listening, memorizing. On my last night, the ceiling was quiet. Too quiet. I lay on a mattress on the floor, the bed frame already gone, staring at the cracked plaster. Part of me hoped I'd imagined everything. Another part knew better. Just before dawn, when the sky outside began to pale, and I was close to sleep, it happened one last time. A single heavy step, right above me. The ceiling bulged inward more than it ever had. Dust fell in a fine shower over my face and chest. Then softly, like knuckles tapping the wrong side of the world, something knocked from inside the plaster. 4 times, once for each corner of the room, as if it were marking the edges of a box. I sat up gasping, heart racing so hard I felt dizzy. The pressure in the room was unbearable, like the air and the ceiling were both about to collapse. Then it stopped. The bulge eased. The feeling lifted. I moved out that same day. Now, in my new home, I live on a middle floor, neighbors above, neighbors below. I tell myself that any footsteps I hear are just people living their lives. But sometimes, late at night, when everything is still and the building is quiet, I hear a different kind of step. Slower, heavier, directly above me. And it always stops in the exact same place, right over where my head rests on the pillow. This concludes Tales of the Darkness. Some people believe fear comes from sudden moments, loud noises, shadows that jump out, things that appear without warning. But the stories you heard tonight suggest something else. That fear can be quiet. That it can wait. That it can live in the places we stop paying attention to. Behind walls. In empty rooms. In corners we pass every day without thinking. Sometimes the most disturbing thing isn't what we see. It's what stays hidden long enough to learn our routines. And once something knows how you live, it doesn't need to chase you. It just waits. If you want more stories like these, make sure to subscribe to Tales of the Darkness, because more nightmares are waiting every night.